David, you're here as the people's representative. You've taken up the people's seat. You're channeling the voices of the masses, if you like. What have they told you?
The masses? Well, it isn't what they told me. It's what they, through me, tried to tell to the people who are sitting in this. You know, we're all smartly dressed and comfortable, thank you very much, and nice cups of coffee, and we are talking about millions of dollars, you know. And the voice of the person whose house has just been burnt down overnight because of global warming hasn't been heard. And it's important that it should be heard. And in what I said, there was a brief couple of minutes in which there was a montage of all kinds and conditions of people, young and old, who are wealthy and poor, whose lives are being affected by what has happened to the climate, and who spoke very powerfully. And that kind of voice echoes powerfully amongst this particular dialogue, and it's very important it should be there.
How do you hope that that will shape the tone of this conference?
I hope it will remind those who are dealing with the future, which is of the planet, that there are real people involved, and that these are real issues. In the West, the comfortable West, and particularly the wealthier part of the comfortable West, you know, we're buffered from these things, and we may well say to one another, well, it doesn't really matter whether we leave the light on, and it doesn't really matter whether we whether we go on eating meat, because we're not affected. But in fact it does matter, because it matters to the whole world. And the first people to feel the consequences, of course, are the poor, are those at the bottom of the heap, are those who are really vulnerable to what is happening in the climate. And that's why the whole world together should actually act on their behalf.
There used to be said that it would be our children or our grandchildren even who would feel the effects of climate change. Do you get the sense now from what you're seeing that it's our generation that is already beginning to see the planet change?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, the forest fires, the desertification in Africa, of course, we've been actually witnessing it, had we been aware of it, for actually decades. But it's getting worse and it's accelerating. That's why something has to be done.
But do you see the will there of the world leaders to actually do something about it?
Well, yes, I honestly think I do. I mean, you know, today, the World Bank announced that they were doubling the sum of money that they were supporting in this climate change issues. Well, that's a powerful thing to say, and a powerful thing to happen. And I sensed a kind of taking in of breath from the whole of the audience who are hearing the lady from the World Bank announce this. That is something. That is something that's putting your money down where your talk is, you know.
3 years ago, we saw world leaders gather and agree this deal in Paris to attempt to limit global temperature rise to 2 degrees or below. And it was seen as a breakthrough moment that America and China were on the same side. They were doing something about carbon dioxide emissions. Do you think that hope has diminished with the passage of time?
Well, it has. I mean, it would be fatuous to say it hasn't diminished when, in fact, one of the most powerful and the wealthiest nations in the world has just pulled out of it. I mean, actually, in a legal sense, they are not out of it yet, because there's about another few months to go before it becomes legally possible for them to withdraw. So that hope against hope, then maybe they won't. Or maybe there will be a change in American politics, and it will become not the policy anymore to withdraw. One can only hope and pray.
But the American president, President Trump, has said that he trusts his gut more than the experts. What would be your message to him?
Look, if you want to know what's something wrong with you, to go to someone who actually has studied your medicine, who knows about science, who understands about all the various complexities of the human body? Or do you go to someone who thinks, oh, well, I've got another idea about it, and I've just thought of a new idea about it? Well, of course you go to a scientist, you go to a doctor, and so we should, as when it comes to the climate.
But he hasn't reversed his position yet.
Not yet.
He's still saying that he will withdraw come 2020. What do you think that would mean for the Paris Agreement?
It would be a blow, but it won't fell it. The majority of the nations of this world are perfectly well convinced about what is happening.
But is there not a danger if the second worst polluter is not part of the deal?
Yes.
It sends a message that will allow others to withdraw as well?
Yes, but does that mean you just throw everything to one side and say, well, there we are, we'll forget about the whole thing? Of course it doesn't. It just means you've got to be more vigorous than you ever were and present the evidence and hope that people will look at it in the evidence. I mean, goodness me, in America, they're actually witnessing and suffering the consequences already. And you don't actually cure that by saying, well, it wasn't really a consequence. I mean, what do you say to the people of paradise standing among the ruins of their homes?
What about China then? We've seen this extraordinary economic growth in China, the biggest polluter still, year on year. How do you encourage them to change the way they model their economy?
Well, the really extraordinary thing is that the number of people in the world, as we've seen from our own survey, that I've been involved in, most people who are convinced about the reality of climate change are actually the Chinese, within, I think, the first three, if not the first. They are in no doubt at all. And when Chinese governments make up their mind to do things, they often do things in a way that makes Democrats take their breath in. But at least they do them. One feels that the Chinese are very well aware of what's happening to the climate and of what their part in creating that problem.
At home, yes, they have invested hugely in green energy, but at the same time they export their coal-building power stations.
And they're taking it onto our platform, to our playing field. Okay, well then we ought to be in a position to be able to handle that.
Do you sense? It's part of the global picture, isn't it? If China wants to make money with its coal-powered fire stations, it's very difficult to argue against that as a planet. You know, the rest of humanity can't do anything about it.
Of course it's hard. I'm not suggesting it's hard. But if you looked back at the history of this country about taking a fine line about, or a high-minded line about what's happening at home, but having take the hindmost overseas, when it comes to tobacco, let us say, you know, that kind of hypocrisy isn't limited to China.
Ostensibly, this conference is about pushing through the Paris Agreement, making sure that the rule book is transparent, that people understand what they need to do and how they're going to do it. But behind that, there is an even greater urgency from the reports from scientists this year that 2 degrees is no longer enough. We've really got to push for much tougher action and keep it down to 1.5.
Yeah.
Do you sense that that is actually achievable?
I have no idea. How would I know? All I know is that what facts the scientists have presented to us mean that would be a major achievement if we did, and that the human beings around the world would be better off if we did. So does that mean we try or not?
But perhaps the politicians are behind the science here, that we're still trying to push through a 2-degree limit, when in fact the scientists have already moved on to 1.5.
No, I think both those figures were the production of scientists. They gave the statistics, and the politicians have taken them up and run with those that seem to be easiest to handle. And maybe that's what they're there for, being politicians. But nonetheless, I mean, if it is conceivably possible to write the 1.5, then we should. And if we fail, then by how much do we fail? We fail by a little less than we would if we took no notice at all or threw our hand in.
But there seems to be a message coming from scientists to politicians now that they need to ramp up their ambition, try harder.
Yes, absolutely. And so we should. But and that's a question of tactics, isn't it? I mean, do you set up a goal that is without of reach, or in which case you might as well then people just give up. And then it's a question of tactics, and I can't judge that. My own view is that we all ought to strive as much as we possibly can do, and what the practical politics are. That's what politicians are about, practicalities. Yeah, we're immensely powerful. And we have so much knowledge, we have so much skill, we have so much ingenuity. Of course we can do something about it. The question is how much? And we ought to set our sights high and go for the best. But there are scientists and inventors and industrialists around the world who are very, very ingenious. Homo sapiens is a very ingenious species, and I believe it's got us into this mess, true, but it knew not what it did. And now is the moment actually to use that ingenuity and that passion to get us out of it.
Before it's too late.
Before it's too late.